No other game in history produced legends the way World of Warcraft did. Not just skilled players, but genuine cultural icons, villains, and walking disasters that transcended gaming entirely. From griefers who terrorized entire servers to players who broke the game so hard, Blizzard had to rewrite the rules. Today, I'm breaking down the most famous and infamous players in WoW history, starting with the most legendary fake moment in game, Leroy Jenkins. Here's the thing about Leroy Jenkins, everybody knows the clip. A paladin from the Pal for Life guild charges headfirst into Upper Blackrock Spire while his entire raid is mid-strategy discussion, screaming his own name like a battle cry, pulling every single whelp in the room, and causing a catastrophic full raid wipe. It's the most iconic moment in World of Warcraft history, and it was completely staged, but that almost doesn't matter. The video hit the early internet before anyone suspected a thing. It spread organically across forums, email chains, and early video sharing sites because the execution was so believable. The panicked voices, the absurd 32.33 repeating survival calculation, the resigned "at least I have chicken" at the end. It felt real. By the time people figured out it was scripted, millions had already watched it, quoted it, and made it part of their vocabulary. The reveal changed nothing, and that's what makes Leroy genuinely fascinating. A scripted comedy bit became a more enduring cultural artifact than almost any real achievement in the game's 20-year history. His name became everyday shorthand for reckless decision making, and not just in gaming. People who have never touched World of Warcraft know what it means to pull a Leroy. Blizzard themselves added an official achievement named after him in Upper Blackrock Spire, cementing a meme into actual game canon. The debate still rages about whether Leroy or the Onyxia wipe deserves the crown as WoW's greatest viral moment. We'll get to that one later. Leroy had something the Onyxia wipe never did: complete cultural escape velocity. He left the game, he left gaming, he became language. But if one fake moment defined WoW comedy forever, the next player on this list defined something much darker. Red shirt guy. Imagine being 17 years old, standing up at a microphone in front of thousands of people at BlizzCon and telling the developers of World of Warcraft that they got their own lore wrong. Now imagine being right. That's exactly what happened in October 2010 when a teenager in a red shirt stepped up to the Q&A panel and asked about Falstad Wildhammer, a character the devs had seemingly forgotten existed in their own game. The panel stumbled, they looked at each other, and the audience realized in real time that this kid from the crowd knew more about Warcraft lore than the people who wrote it. The clip hit YouTube and exploded, millions of views within days. Like, yeah, the internet didn't celebrate him immediately, they mocked him. His red shirt, his red hair, his flat robotic delivery, like, comment sections tore him apart. He became a meme, but not the kind anyone would want to be. Then something shifted. People actually listened to what he said instead of how he said it, and they realized this wasn't some random troll trying to embarrass Blizzard. This was a guy who loved the game so deeply that he caught an inconsistency the entire development team missed, and he had the guts to say it out loud on camera. The mockery slowly turned into respect. The community did a complete 180. Blizzard's response sealed his legacy permanently. They added an NPC called the Wildhammer Fact Checker directly beside the character he corrected them about, a permanent in-game acknowledgement that a teenager from the audience knew their lore better than they did. His real name was Ian Bates, and most people didn't even know that for years. He was just red shirt guy. He came back to BlizzCon in 2011, and Chris Metzen gave him a hug on stage. The kid who got laughed at became the kid who got immortalized in the game itself. It's the kind of underdog redemption arc that Warcraft loves to write into its own characters, except this one was real. But not every famous WoW player earned their reputation through knowledge and courage, and some earned it through pure, unrelenting chaos. Snuts. Here's a question most casual WoW players never think to ask. Who was actually the best? Like, not the most famous, not the most entertaining streamer. The best. The player who, if you sat down every professional competitor and analyst and forced them to give one name, would come up more than anyone else. The answer is a warlock named Snuts, and unless you followed competitive WoW closely, you've probably never heard of him. Snuts didn't have the viral clips. He didn't have the massive Twitch audience or the dramatic storylines that make someone a household name in the community. What he had was something harder to manufacture and impossible to fake. Sustained cross-expansion dominance at the highest level of competitive play for nearly a decade. Let me put that in perspective. WoW's meta shifts constantly. Classes get buffed, nerfed, Warcraft reworked from the ground up. Strategies that dominate one season become completely unviable the next. Staying at the top through even one of those transitions is impressive. Snuts did it across multiple expansions, multiple Arena World Championship appearances, and multiple tournament victories throughout his career. But here's the story that really tells you everything you need to know about his skill level. During a tournament match, Snuts played on someone else's setup. Not his keybinds, not his UI, not his muscle memory configuration, someone else's entire control scheme. And he still won. He still outplayed the competition. That's not mechanical skill. That's something deeper. That's a player who understood the game at such a fundamental conceptual level that the physical interface barely mattered. He wasn't reacting to buttons. He was reading the game itself. Professional players and analysts started calling him the Michael Jordan of WoW, and the comparison fits for a specific reason. It's not just about peak performance. It's about the combination of longevity, range of achievement, and the ability to dominate across completely different competitive eras. Now, is the GOAT title unanimous? No. Reckful's name comes up constantly, and rightfully so, especially after his dominant MLG performances, including his championship win at MLG Washington, D.C. in 2010. Venruki has a legitimate argument based on his own sustained competitive career. Swapsy gets mentioned in certain circles, but when you look at the full picture, the sheer breadth of Snuts' achievements across the longest competitive time frame, most people who actually competed at that level will tell you the same thing. It was Snuts, and the fact that most players don't even know his name might be the most telling detail of all. The best don't always need to be the loudest. But speaking of players whose names absolutely everyone knows, let's talk about someone who became legendary for very different reasons. Reckful Byron Bernstein played World of Warcraft like nobody else. And I mean that literally. He reached the top 0.1% of competitive PvP rankings while deliberately ignoring mechanics that every other player at that level considered absolutely essential. He didn't just win anyway. He won so convincingly that he pioneered an entirely new rogue playstyle that other players scrambled to copy. His competitive resume speaks for itself. He won MLG Washington, D.C. in 2010 and placed at multiple other MLG events across 2009 and 2010, cementing himself as one of the best PvP players the game had ever produced. But here's what made Reckful different from every other top competitor. He was simultaneously becoming one of the biggest streamers on the entire internet. He was among the first major Twitch streamers period, reaching 50,000 concurrent viewers at his peak. His video Reckful 3 hit 1 million views within a single week of release and climbed past 6 million by 2022. That kind of dual legitimacy almost never happens. You're either the guy who wins tournaments or the guy who entertains audiences. Reckful was both at the same time, and nobody questioned either credential. The competitive players respected him because he had the results. The viewers loved him because he had the personality. That combination made him irreplaceable. But this story doesn't have a happy ending. Byron struggled openly with his mental health throughout his career, and the pressures of streaming, public life, and community toxicity took a visible toll. On July 2nd, 2020, he died by suicide. He was 31 years old. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of characters standing in silence, filling the cathedral and spilling out into the surrounding streets. It was one of the most powerful moments the WoW community has ever produced, completely uncoordinated and completely genuine. Blizzard noticed. They placed a permanent NPC trainer named Reckful inside the Cathedral of Light, not in some random corner of the world, in the exact location where players had already chosen to gather. The memorial wasn't Blizzard telling the community where to grieve, it was Blizzard acknowledging where the community already had. His legacy sparked real conversations across the gaming industry about streamer burnout, mental health support, and the cost of living your life in front of an audience. Those conversations are still happening today, but Reckful's story is one of loss. The next player on this list, their story is one of pure chaos, Gaiman. For years, there was a Tauren standing in the Orgrimmar Inn who existed for one reason: to die. His name was Gaiman, and he was technically a pickpocket target for rogue training quests. That was his entire purpose. A level 12 NPC in a city full of max level players with nothing better to do. You can probably guess what happened next. Thousands of players killed Gaiman every single day. Not because he dropped anything, not because there was a quest for it, not because he was hostile. He was just there, standing in the same spot, respawning every few minutes, completely defenseless. He became the communal stress ball of the entire Horde faction. Bad day in a battleground? Go kill Gaiman. Waiting for your raid to form up? Go kill Gaiman. Bored and standing in Orgrimmar with literally nothing else to do? Gaiman's right there. He never fought back. He never ran. He just took it. But here's where it gets interesting. Blizzard noticed. When Wrath of the Lich King launched, the developers buffed Gaiman to elite status and gave him a unique ability called Pride Breaker. If you attacked him now, he'd dismount you and knock you back across the room. That's not a bug fix. That's not a balance patch. That's the developers looking at years of player behavior and saying, all right, he fights back now. It was a direct, playful retaliation from the dev team, and the community loved it, but the story doesn't end there. It gets better. By patch 5.4.0, during the siege of Orgrimmar, Gaiman wasn't just surviving anymore. He was fighting alongside the Horde as a defender of the city. The NPC that players had murdered tens of thousands of times was now standing on the front lines as a hero. Blizzard even added an achievement for it. Gaiman will save us. That's real. An NPC who was slaughtered for entertainment for years got retroactively written into heroism. Think about that. This is the only case in gaming history where griefing a defenseless character led directly to his promotion. Players created Gaiman's story by abusing him, and the developers responded by giving him one of the strangest, most satisfying character arcs in the entire game. From punching bag to war hero, all because a million bored players couldn't leave him alone. But Gaiman's story is lighthearted compared to what comes next. Swifty. Before Swifty, warriors had a reputation problem. The class was seen as a meat shield. You stood in front of the boss, you pressed Sunder armor, and you hoped your healer didn't fall asleep. Nobody was making highlight reels of warriors. Nobody was watching warrior PvP and thinking, I want to do that. Then Swifty uploaded his first montage, and the entire perception of the class changed overnight. His vanilla WoW videos were something nobody had seen before. Massive one-shot kills, perfectly timed ability stacks, mechanics exploits that turned a supposedly boring class into the most explosive thing in a battleground. He wasn't just winning fights, he was ending them in a single global cooldown while players scrambled to figure out what just happened. The community started calling any flashy warrior play pulling a Swifty, and that phrase stuck for years. His name literally became a verb for warrior excellence. But here's the thing that made Swifty different from every other montage creator of that era. He didn't just show you the kills, he explained them. At a time when most WoW educational content was either dry forum posts with walls of text or raw, unedited PvP footage with zero context, Swifty figured out something that now seems obvious but genuinely wasn't back then. You could entertain people and teach them at the same time. His instructional PvP guides broke down exactly how he pulled off those one-shots, what gear he was using, what ability sequences made it work, and why positioning mattered. He invented a content template that merged entertainment with education, and that template influenced gaming content creation for the next decade, and the man just didn't go away. That's the part people underestimate. Most early WoW personalities disappeared the moment their class got nerfed or the meta shifted. Swifty survived every balance patch, every expansion, every shift in how PvP worked. He adapted, he kept creating. His personality and communication skills carried him long after any single warrior trick stopped being viable. Some people will tell you Swifty's legacy is pure nostalgia, that he's remembered fondly because people were young when they watched him, not because he actually innovated. And honestly, the nostalgia is absolutely real, but it's real because the innovation was real. He changed how an entire class was perceived, pioneered a content format that became industry standard, and outlasted virtually every creator from his generation. That's not nostalgia talking. That's a legacy. But if Swifty built a legacy through longevity and innovation, the next player on this list built something entirely different. A reputation so intense, it sparked conversations that went far beyond the game itself. Athene. 14 hours and 40 minutes. That's how long it took Athene and his group to hit level 80 when Wrath of the Lich King launched. The second fastest player, 27 hours. Athene didn't just win the race to world first, he lapped everyone in it. Here's how he did it. His group was built from the ground up for one purpose: maximum AoE damage output. Boomkins, mages, everything designed to obliterate massive pools of mobs as fast as physically possible. But the real innovation was in mob tagging mechanics. See, the way WoW's experience system worked, the amount of XP you received was tied to how damage was distributed across tagged mobs. Athene's team figured out how to optimize this interaction to a degree nobody had even considered. They weren't using third-party tools, they weren't hacking, they were playing the game exactly as it existed, just better than anyone thought was possible. And then Blizzard banned them. The entire raid group gone. Immediately after the achievement was confirmed and documented, Blizzard stepped in and wiped the slate. The official reason? Terms of service violations. But here's where it gets complicated. Blizzard never formally clarified which specific mechanics were considered illegal. They never pointed to a rule and said, this one right here, you broke this. They just pulled the trigger and moved on. Think about that for a second. A group of players used mechanics that existed in the live game. Mechanics that Blizzard themselves designed and shipped, optimized them to their absolute limit, achieved something genuinely historic, and got punished for it. No warning, no explanation, just a ban. This raised a question that the WoW community has never fully resolved. If a mechanic exists in the game and no rule explicitly prohibits using it, where exactly is the line between clever optimization and an exploit? And more importantly, who gets to draw that line? Because in this case, it wasn't drawn before the race, it was drawn after Athene already won it. Some players defended Blizzard, arguing that the spirit of the competition was violated, even if no specific rule was broken. Others pointed out that punishing players retroactively for using your own systems is a terrible precedent. Both sides have a point, and that's exactly why this one still gets argued about. The uncomfortable truth is that Athene exposed something Blizzard didn't want exposed. Not a bug, not a hack, just the gap between how they thought their game worked and how it actually worked when someone smart enough pushed it to the edge. And instead of acknowledging that gap, they banned the people who found it. But Athene's controversy is relatively clean compared to what happens when fame, community, and real money collide. And that story is next. Karmer. Most players find exploits by accident. They stumble into a glitch, clip through a wall, or notice something weird after a patch. Karmer didn't stumble into anything. He reverse engineered a game system so thoroughly that he understood it better than the people who built it. Here's the thing. Paladins in vanilla WoW had an ability called Reckoning. Every time you were critically hit, you gained a stack that let your next attack strike an extra time. Simple enough on paper, but Karmer discovered that through precise manipulation of swing timers, sit strafe mechanics, and damage calculation, you could stack Reckoning to unlimited levels. Not dozens, not hundreds, unlimited. The ability had zero cap because Blizzard never imagined anyone would figure out how to exploit the interaction between sitting to force critical hits and canceling animations at frame perfect intervals. This wasn't some macro you could download. It required a level of mechanical understanding that most players didn't even know existed. You had to sit at exactly the right moment to guarantee incoming crits, strafe to cancel your recovery animation, and manage your swing timer so precisely that each stack accumulated without accidentally releasing them. One mistimed input and the whole thing collapsed. It was less like playing a paladin and more like performing surgery on the game's combat engine in real time. But here's where it gets legendary. Karmer didn't just prove the concept in a duel or against some random mob. He walked up to Kazakh, an outdoor raid boss designed for 40 players, and solo killed it. One paladin, one swing. Every accumulated Reckoning stack released simultaneously in a single catastrophic catastrophic blow that deleted a raid boss from existence. The community lost its mind. Paladin players treated it like a religious event. For a class that spent most of vanilla being told to shut up and heal, watching one of their own solo a raid boss was vindication at the highest possible level. It wasn't just impressive, it was proof that the Paladin class had hidden potential that nobody, not even Blizzard's own developers, had fully mapped out. The broader community recognized it too. This wasn't a conventional display of skill like arena ratings or speed clears. This was a completely different category of mastery. Karma had achieved something the game was explicitly not designed to allow. Using only legitimate abilities and mechanical precision, Blizzard eventually patched it. They rebalanced Reckoning and changed swing timer mechanics so the exploit could never be replicated, but the damage was already done in the best possible way. Karma had proven that a single player with complete system knowledge could break the fundamental rules of encounter design. But if you think one player breaking a boss fight is chaotic, wait until you hear about the player who turned an entire server into a war zone just by existing. Angwei Yi, some players become famous for what they build. Angwei became famous for what he destroyed, which was basically everyone's day. Here's the setup. Angwei was an orc rogue on the Dithekis server during Vanilla WoW, and he had one mission in life: make Menethil Harbor unplayable for the Alliance. For those who don't remember, Menethil Harbor was the transit hub. If you were Alliance and needed to get between continents, you went through Menethil. There was no alternative. It was the bottleneck of the entire faction's travel infrastructure, and Angwei sat in it for roughly 9 hours a day, every single day, killing everything that moved. This wasn't casual ganking. This wasn't some rogue who popped in, got a few kills, and logged off. This was a full-time occupation. Low-level players trying to catch the boat to Theramore, dead. Players coming back from Ironforge, dead. People just passing through, minding their own business, believe it or not, also dead. He turned a critical Alliance waypoint into a kill box and operated it with the consistency of a government employee. But here's where it gets weird. Angwei didn't just gank people, he documented it. He rolled an Alliance ult using variations of his own name, specifically to whisper his victims after killing them. He'd bait them into conversations, screenshot their rage, their confusion, their desperate pleas, and then archive every single interaction on a personal website. He was essentially running a psychological research project on grief, except the grief was something he personally manufactured. The website was a trophy case, pages of screenshots showing Alliance players losing their minds, begging him to stop, threatening to report him, or just typing in all caps, and Angwei collected every single one like baseball cards. Here's the thing that separates Angwei from every other ganker in WoW history. His presence became so oppressive that Alliance players on Dithekis actually wrote guides about him. Not guides about rogue PvP, not guides about surviving ganking in general, guides specifically about avoiding one player. They documented his patterns, his timing, his favorite hiding spots, his stealth routes. The opposing faction created organized counter-strategy literature about a single person. That's a level of notoriety that nobody else has ever achieved through pure antagonism. Some of his victims were so frustrated, they created horde alts on his server just to confront him directly. They rolled entirely new characters on the opposing faction specifically to tell one rogue how much they hated him. That's not normal player behavior. That's what happens when someone has embedded themselves so deeply into your gameplay experience that ignoring them isn't an option anymore. And the era context matters here. This was vanilla WoW on a PvP server. Ganking wasn't a bug, it was the feature. You rolled on a PvP server knowing this could happen. Angwei just perfected it. He took the implicit social contract of PvP servers, read every line of it, and then optimized his entire playstyle around exploiting it to the absolute maximum. No exploits, no hacks, no rule breaking, just pure, sustained, dedicated commitment to making one specific location a nightmare for thousands of players. There's no redemption arc here, no moment where the community came around and celebrated him. Angwei is pure infamy, the kind of player who proved that sometimes the most memorable thing you can do in an MMO is make everyone else miserable and then take screenshots of the results. But if Angwei represents the dark side of individual notoriety, our final entry represents something completely different. 2 dives. If you've ever led a raid, you know the feeling. That moment where you've explained the fight 3 times, called out every mechanic, begged people to stay in position, and and then watch the entire group do the exact opposite of everything you just said. Now imagine that feeling recorded, animated, and uploaded for millions of people to hear. That's exactly what happened to the warrior and raid leader of the Wipe Club Guild during an Onyxia raid that went catastrophically wrong. And when I say catastrophically, I mean the kind of wipe where everything falls apart so completely that the only reasonable human response is to lose your mind. Yeah, which is precisely what he did. The audio is legendary. You can hear him calling out commands with increasing desperation, his voice climbing from firm instruction to full-blown rage as the raid spirals out of control, players running the wrong direction, whelps getting aggroed from every corner of the lair, healers dying, DPS panicking, giants, and through all of it, this one man trying to hold 40 people together through sheer volume and willpower, failing spectacularly and producing some of the most quotable lines in gaming history in the process. Here's the thing, the audio alone would have been memorable, but a third party took that recording and animated the entire disaster, syncing the chaos on screen to every frustrated command and every exasperated scream. That animation racked up over 8 million views and became one of the most shared pieces of gaming content on the early internet. People who had never touched World of Warcraft were quoting it. The phrases became shorthand in guilds across every server. But what makes the Onyxia wipe truly special, and what separates it from almost every other famous WoW moment, is one simple fact. It was real. Unlike Leroy Jenkins, which was staged and rehearsed to look spontaneous, the Onyxia wipe audio was confirmed to be completely unscripted. There was no setup, no comedic timing planned in advance, no second take. Aldaris, what you hear is a genuine, unfiltered moment of human frustration from someone who had been trying to corral a group of real humans through a difficult encounter and finally snapped. You can hear the exhaustion in his voice, the disbelief, the exact second where patience dies and raw emotion takes over. And that authenticity is precisely why it hits differently. The Leroy Jenkins versus Onyxia wipe debate has never fully been resolved in the community, and honestly, it probably never will be. Leroy penetrated mainstream culture more broadly. He got referenced on television, became a dictionary-level shorthand for reckless behavior, and earned an in-game achievement named after him. His cultural footprint is undeniable, but the Onyxia wipe carries something Leroy never could: emotional truth. You can't fake the sound of a man who has genuinely had enough. You can't script that level of real frustration, and every single player who has ever tried to lead a raid, herd a battleground, or organize any group of gamers for any purpose heard that audio and thought the same thing. I've been that guy. That's the difference. Leroy Jenkins makes you laugh because the setup is perfect. The Onyxia wipe makes you laugh because the emotion is real. They represent two entirely different theories of what makes something funny, and both of them are right. And that's what makes this list so fascinating when you step back and look at it as a whole. Every player on it, from the staged chaos of Leroy to the genuine meltdown of Two Dives, from griefers camping harbors to teenagers correcting developers at their own convention, from world first racers to solo exploiters who broke encounters that were never meant to be broken alone, they all prove the same thing. World of Warcraft didn't just create a game, it created conditions for human moments, moments of brilliance, frustration, grief, competition, humor, and raw, unscripted emotion that outlasted the patches, outlasted the expansions, and for many of the millions who played, outlasted the game itself. These aren't just famous players, they're proof that when you put enough people into a world and give them enough freedom, the most memorable things that happen won't be the ones the developers planned, they'll be the ones nobody saw coming. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.